Hey everybody, I am Sarah. This is Overkill Reviews. This is BangerTV's weekly heavy metal review show. I am back again, and this time it's to talk about death metal. On that note, this week I'm reviewing the fifth studio album from a band that helped popularize the old school death metal movement back when it started in the early 2010s. And in my opinion, they somewhat lost the plot on their fourth studio album. This band is absolutely revered, particularly on the west coast of the United States. They made one of my favorite death metal albums of all time with Patricidal Lust. Let's listen to a track from their new album. That track that you just heard is called Indwelling Archon. It's by the mighty VASTUM. It is featured on their fifth studio album, Inward To Gethsemane, and it's out now via $20 bin. VASTUM formed in 2009 in San Francisco, California, USA, and have been anchored by guitarist and vocalist Leela Abdul-Rauf, who I personally adore, and vocalist Daniel Butler since their inception. They released their somewhat uneven debut, Carnal Law, in 2011. 2 years later, they unleashed Patricidal Lust, this bad boy sitting right next to me, which absolutely exploded in the metal underground as being a shining example of old school death metal done right. The lyrics, which are penned by both Daniel and Leela, are absolutely fascinating and really disgusting, often exploring kind of revolting bodily experiences in this really gross and vivid way. Seriously, just read those lyrics. They are unnerving. Anyhow, musically, VASTUM emulates Incantation, Autopsy, Bolt Thrower, and Neck Rot, and while both Patricidal Lust and their third album, Hole Below, were extremely strong, with 2019's Or Official Purge, I personally just started to feel a little bit bored with the band's sound. I wasn't the only person who felt this way. Just look at some of the reviews on Metallum. Regardless, in 2023, now, the band's lineup is composed of Leela and Daniel, alongside longtime guitarist Shelby Larimore, who joined way back in 2013, drummer Chad Gailey, and new bassist Colin Tarvin. Together, they've made Inwards To Gethsemane. Does the new record capture the filthy magic that made their second and third albums so special? Or do they go off in new directions? Or do they flop spectacularly? Let's find out. In preparation for this review, I went back and I listened to all the VASTUM albums in order because I wanted to see if my boredom for the album Or Official Purge was justified, and I also wanted to see if the band had integrated anything new into the repertoire for album 5. And yes, they did, and the absolute first thing that I noticed was Leela's vocals, because there's a larger variety of ranges in her vocals on this record. Main vocalist Daniel is also using more range, but Leela's change is notable here because in addition to her work with VASTUM, she is also a multi-instrumentalist and composer who does extremely dark, haunting solo work. And I really liked that she put more of this haunting style into VASTUM's music, such as she did on the massive Stillborn Eternity. You can hear this elsewhere on the album as well, including here on album closer and highlight Corpus Fractum. This song is cool. I love this song. The more that I listen to Inwards To Gethsemane, the more that I'm convinced that Leela's work as a composer is seeping far heavier into VASTUM. Leela is on her fifth solo album with that project, and you can tell it's an extremely important artistic project to her, and that style she explores within her solo work is audibly affecting VASTUM's sound, increasingly as the years go by. Consequently, Inwards to Gethsemane feels more layered and atmospheric than all the previous VASTUM albums, giving it additional weight and density. Now, it's very easy to be hyperbolic about death metal, but herein the adjectives apply: crushing, cinematic, dense. A good example of this is on the opening track, Judas, not opening to the album, but it's a track that opens into another track. On the opening track, Judas, which runs for 1 minute and 40 seconds of atmospheric sound and clips before following directly into or leading directly into the track Indwelling Archeron, which absolutely explodes into oral violence. And you heard a chunk of Indwelling Archeron at the beginning of this review, but you're going to hear some more now. First up, intro track.
There's nothingness mine, and he too would know that there's no end for a man who wants to end alone.
It's kind of hard to pinpoint what can make a band feel more focused and tight on a record. And I was really curious to see if anything had changed in VASTUM's writing process. So I went and I did some digging in preparation for this review. I was also curious to see if my hunch about the increased cinematic presence was correct. And in the process, I ended up watching an interview on the Beavermosh channel where Leela confirmed that it was indeed increased. And she also revealed that the band wrote this album long distance via Guitar Pro rather than jamming it out. If you're curious to watch that video interview and hear more from VASTUM directly about how they make music, then you should click the link in the video description. Say what you want about bands jamming out tracks versus writing them at a distance or in Guitar Pro, but as a songwriter, I personally think writing tracks in something like Guitar Pro can actually bring out the best in musicians because you're able to be more precise and more rich and intentional. And you're able to improve your song structures far beyond how most people can in a jam space. And I hear that focused attention to detail and song structure and rich layers all throughout Inwards to Gethsemane. Because this is an overarching comment about the entirety of the album, I'm not going to show you a clip, but instead I'm going to encourage you to listen to the album once this review is complete and judge for yourself. So, what does this all mean for a verdict? The post-pandemic surge in really strong releases in the metal scene has been quite something to experience as a fanatical music fan. You can really tell that bands took their time with their albums over the pandemic, and they really had the time to craft their art during lockdown. We're truly currently experiencing an embarrassment of riches. It has made albums just across the board really tight and strong, and accordingly, all of my reviews as of late have been quite positive, and most of the albums have received extremely high ratings. The new album by VASTUM is similarly going to receive a high rating. I really like Inwards to Gethsemane, and I'm curious to see how much I listen to it long term. But so far, I actually do think that it is possibly on par with Patricidal Lust, which I didn't anticipate that. Makes me feel good because I really like VASTUM. For all those reasons, Inwards to Gethsemane is getting 4.5 skulls out of 5 here on Overkill Reviews. Now it's time for the show, the death metal edition. And holy hell, some sick death metal bands have upcoming albums. First up, international charnel death metal masters Cruciamentium are finally releasing the follow-up to their magnificent 2015 debut, Charnel Passages. I picked this one up when the guys played a gig in Toronto in 2017, and I wrote a rave review of that gig for Exclaim. You can find the link to that in the video description. For those who have yet to hear them, Cruciamentium makes pulverizing and dense blackened death metal that is atmospheric and crushing. Their new album, which is called Obsidian Reflections, will be released on November 20th via Profound Lore Records. Next up, Italian death metal outfit Tenebro will be releasing their second studio album called Ultime Grida dalla Goingla on November 21st via Extreme Music. The band first jumped on my radar with the release of their 2022 debut, L'Inizio di un Incubo, and they are more in the Mortician, Impetigo style of the genre. They're pretty gross. It's fun. You can check them out and grab their new album on Bandcamp. Okay, thanks everybody. That's it.